Douglas Murray is yet another one of these like classic, unimaginably right-wing, unimaginably racist British charlatans that basically revitalized their career post October 7 by just unconditionally dick riding Israel. Anti-Zionism versus anti-Semitism is, I heard that this is like low quality, this lecture. I think it's pretty crazy that they have, on the one hand, they have literally Douglas Murray, who is a psychopathic right-wing propagandist from England, versus Mehdi Hasan, who's like a pretty solid journalist, and Gideon Levy. Like, this is so cooked. Who's the other person? I don't even know who the other person is.
Don't change your mind. Let's see those results.
It's like if someone started a war on American soil and said anyone flying the American flag is an asset of the government and a legitimate target. This tweet sums up the debate. Shocking to hear that the audience who booed Oxfam and shouted anti-Semite as Mehdi talked about Doctors Without Borders thought Douglas Murray won the debate.
HCR, UNICEF, Doctors Without Borders, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, Oxfam, Christian Aid. Yep, you're booing. What does it come to when you're booing Oxfam? What does that tell you about yourselves? You're sitting here booing Oxfam to defend Benjamin Netanyahu. Let me just deal with something you just said. You talked about debunking propaganda. First of all, you can't even get Israeli propaganda straight. The Israeli government's own security agency, Shin Bet, investigated what you just said and said, no, we found no evidence that workers from Gaza were involved in the October 7th attack. Oh, Shin Bet are lying. They're booing Shin Bet, the Israeli security service. Got it. All right, let me finish my point. You had a 5-minute speech from your side. Okay. That's Shin Bet. Let me just deal with your wider point here. Douglas and Natasha tonight want to make this entire debate about October 7th. I get it. It's a horror show. But that's not the debate. The debate was about Zionism, and it tells you a lot that they can't find any arguments to say, as Gideon says, why we can't be allowed to criticize a political ideology that is 150 years old, that many Jewish people have criticized from the beginning and continue to do so. They can't tell you why that is. So they focus on October the 7th, which is fine, but if you're going to focus on October 7th, then also focus on what happened since October the 7th, the erasure of Palestinians in this debate, the booing when Gideon mentions what happened to Palestinians. Shameful. I'm sorry to say, it's absolutely shameful and telling about what's going on. And I would say this, if we're going to talk about October 7th...
61% of the crowd before the debate started thought anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. At the end, somehow 66% agreed. Psychos, that's awesome.
And what happened since? Everyone's a liar. The Hamas health ministry is like, everyone's a liar. Okay, friend of mine, American doctor, goes to Gaza. Many doctors have gone to Gaza. You've seen them on the news. They're all liars, all Hamas, apparently. Friend of mine went to Gaza. He's been to Sudan. He doesn't just use it for whataboutism like Douglas. He's been to Sudan. He's been to Afghanistan. He's worked there. He came back from Gaza and said, I've never seen atrocities like I've seen here. What's happened to children? He's an anti-Semite because he saw children with burn wounds like he's never seen. He saw children with gunshot wounds to the head. To the head, but that's Hamas's fault. Everything is Hamas's fault. So let's talk about war crimes. It is amazing that every human rights group in the world, including Israeli human rights groups like B'Tselem, Gisha, Yeshdin, are all documenting this stuff, but you guys think it's all imaginary. So again, it tells you about what Zionism is. This is not about some abstract ideology of, people trying to settle the land and trying to have it. But as Gideon said, there was an argument to be had in the 1940s, 30s, 20s. Zionism today is what the Palestinians are enduring on a daily, nightly basis in Gaza, in the West Bank, in East Jerusalem, in Israel itself. And the erasure of that tells you everything about why we need to be able to talk about what Zionism does to the Palestinians without being smeared as anti-Semites.
Bro's rattling off so many names and they're just like, Pago, you're wrong. At a certain point, you can't win an argument like this. You just have to accept that you're on the correct side and they're not. No, I think it's good, though, to like, what is this? I see you got nicely humiliated by Douglas K. Murray last night in Toronto with the Monk debates. It couldn't have possibly happened to someone more deserving. Yeah, this is hugbox shit, dude. This is people just like trying to do a victory parade, trying to do a victory lap when you're just huffing on unimaginable amounts of copium when like the rest of the world, dude, this is what you do. This is dying empire shit. This is what you do when you're like losing the argument everywhere else. You try to find a place where you are winning. You know what I mean? You just like get together a bunch of people who agree with you, and then you go, see, all these people that agree with me agree with me. It's like, all right, yeah, we've seen this before. I'm sure if I were to watch this debate, I would have a much different opinion on the matter.
Up on the screen now, 77% say you could conceivably change your mind depending on what you hear. 23% no. So this debate is very much in play as we begin, and that's what we're going to do right now. With opening statements, Douglas Murray, you're up first. 6 minutes on the clock.
Well, thank you very much, Rudyard. It's a great pleasure to be back at the Monk debates. When I was last here a couple of years ago, I just returned from the front line of the war in Ukraine, where I was with the Ukrainian armed forces. And for most of the last 8 months, I've been in Israel and Gaza, following the war there as closely as I can. And I won't go into all of the details now that I could give you of what's happening. But I would just put it in perspective in this way, first of all. What happened on the 7th of October was not just a massive attack on...
Douglas Murray is yet another one of these like classic, unimaginably right-wing, unimaginably racist British charlatans that basically revitalized their career post-October 7 by just unconditionally dick-riding Israel. Like, there are many such cases of this. Like, a lot of people are like at least somewhat cognizant of Israel's actions. No, this isn't the bell curve guy. He's named after the same. No, that's Charles Murray. But I always make that mistake as well. He's just like a massive raging Islamophobe. And the thing is, both are racist, by the way. Charles Murray, bell curve, obviously super racist. But Douglas Murray was one of those dudes who just like didn't really have like a massive footprint. I only know about it because I know all these like weirdos, even in England, because like, you know, I love these fascinating pets. But the thing is, like, he's gotten a lot more prominence because Israel doesn't really have a lot of at least like cool-headed propagandists that they can deploy, especially as the situation worsens, especially as they become increasingly more violent, increasingly more brutal. Douglas Murray and like Divorcelli are some of the remaining loyal soldiers, basically. So if you're in a dire situation when it comes to propaganda, and there is mass mobilization occurring against your ethnic cleansing campaign, you're going to rely on whoever the fuck will do any kind of propaganda at your behest.
Innocent people inside Israel. It was the equivalent to about 6,000 Canadians being massacred and burned in their homes in one day. It was the equivalent of about 1,500 of your fellow Canadians being taken hostage. You know, you would have thought after an attack like the one that Hamas instigated, that started this terrible war, you would have thought that there would be some sympathy for the world, from the world. You might have thought...
No, the bell curve is a math thing. The bell curve book that Charles Murray wrote is scientific racism, claiming that like black people just have lower IQ. I don't want to get into that right now. That's like a totally separate subject. Loner Box at this point too, the guy's cozying up to D far too much. I think he's, you know, he's been a friend of Destiny's for quite a while. I'm just more so shocked because he was like pretty level-headed about Israel in the past. Anyway, I haven't been keeping up with him, so I don't know.
World would pay attention to the attack and at least pay attention to the people behind it. You might have expected, like me, that there might have been a worldwide opposition to the terrorists and rapists and murderers of Hamas. You might have thought there would be hatred around the world erupting at the government of...
The only thing Lonerbox does these days is make content about you? Really? I didn't even know he was... Is he? The kind of content could he be making about me in terms of like my recent commentary on Israel? Unless he's like... I mean, I don't know. Anyway. He's an annoying deorbiter that all he's ever say is you suck on Russia and are wrong about JDAMs and shit? Okay. I mean, that's odd, but he makes a lot of content about your coverage. He hedges your side and gives cover for Israel. Ultimately, he's careful with his analysis. He had an entire hour on why you're anti-Semitic. Wait, what? No, he didn't. He did an entire hour on why I'm anti-Semitic. He does shit like this. Should I react to this when I get home? Yeah, he should react to this when he gets home. He's just farming the Destiny community. As far as I understand. How do you go from calling Israel an apartheid state a year ago to mocking people who think Israel is bad? Yeah, this is like what's crazy. Didn't he literally used to? I mean, I thought he was like, he was saying Israel's an apartheid. He did videos on how Israel's an apartheid. Are Hasan and his fans okay? Owen Jones stuns loner box with bizarre analysis. Yeah, I mean, look, Hasan freaks out on peers after weirdest pro-Palestine. Yeah, I mean, there you go. He's just, yeah, that's sad. He's just another, he's just another content creator, I think, that is just farming Destiny's audience to varying success. It seems like he did the classic, like Hasan and his fans are really mad about Hasan drinking Coca-Cola, and then even went so far as to say Hasan freaks out on peers after weirdest pro-Palestine video, which objectively was like absolutely eviscerated by the court of public opinion. No, he's very pro-Palestine and his community is too. That's what I thought too. I'm genuinely shocked. Like I've mentioned before, Lonerbox showed me Beast Process, who is a phenomenal content creator, a smaller content creator in general. Like that's where Hasan is a grifter, divorce, pedophile, both sides are genocide. Starts a kick stream later to be banned for number 2. Right-wing transphobe. Yeah, the Hasan is a grifter pipeline is crazy. Anyway, whatever. Who cares?
Qatar and its mouthpiece, Al Jazeera, its funding of Hamas and its hosting of the leadership of Hamas in Qatar. You might have thought there'd have been an outpouring of rage at the Islamic Revolutionary Government in Tehran, but no. There was an immediate outpouring of rage against the state that had been attacked. Bring back our girls, we had 10 years ago in the war in northern Nigeria, which I also covered. Bring back our girls. No international campaign saying bring back our Jewish children. Believe all women, we've been told for years. But turns out...
Wait, I don't think Douglas Murray was a big advocate for Me Too, bro. What? He's like a super right-wing guy. Let's see. Yeah, Depp Heard trial marks the end of the Me Too era. The groupthink tyranny of woke. Douglas Murray. Divided by a race, gender, sexual orientation. Sounds like a bigoted society. Yeah, this guy's not pro Me Too. What are we talking about? Douglas Murray challenges wokeness, identity politics, and groupthinks in his new book, The Madness of the Crowds, Gender, Race, and Identity. My man said Me Too only when Israel has declared that there is mass rape happening at the hands of Hamas on October 7. Yeah, also, he literally, yeah, I forgot about this. Douglas Murray in Australia. Douglas Murray is arguably the most impressive current advocate globally for Israel and its conflict with Hamas. Australian Academic Alliance Against Anti-Semitism wrote this. Is now a good time to talk about Jews and money? Article by Douglas Murray. That's so funny. He's like, he's like said anti-Semitic shit in the past too. He's a classic right-wing guy in the UK.
In the Gaza war, people of largely Muslim faith are being bombed, starved, and driven from their homes. And unsurprisingly, that means it's brought a lot of extreme Islamophobes out of the woodwork. This is Douglas Murray speaking to US talking head Dave Rubin.
These are enemies within. We have our own ones in Britain.
What is this? He says because 70% of Jewish people are Zionists, therefore anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, but more nuanced. I think you could have a genuine conversation if we were open to it. A genuine conversation with who? With Lonerbox? He doesn't like the word genocide. What the f does that mean? Lonerbox probably one deorbiter you could have a decent conversation with and not be contentious of content farming. He's pro-Palestine, especially West Bank, but definitely disagrees on some things. But he still says it's apartheid. Basically, he doesn't like the word genocide. I mean, at a certain point, you have to look at like the collection of thoughts and opinions that a person is presenting. I say this all the time, right? Like, I don't cover people who are ostensibly on my side, even when they are like being annoying and calling me a grifter, by design. For years and years, I was like, no matter how uncharitable or shitty people were towards me, I chose not to cover them specifically because I was like, I don't really give a shit. Okay. Partially because there are worse enemies out there, way worse villains out there to hyper focus on, rather than some dude who's like otherwise, you know, pro LGBT, blah 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 blah, you know, like a pro civil liberties for marginalized people, pro emancipation. They don't have to subscribe to my entire worldview, because there are people out there with big platforms who are completely against everything I stand for, like the Ben Shapiros of the world, like the Jordan Petersons of the world, like the Steven Crowders of the world, like the Matt Walshes of the world. I feel like that is a more productive use of my time, rather than like hyper focusing on certain key differences in agreement that we have on issues. Now, there's a difference between someone who has openly called Israel being an apartheid and someone who says that that's not real. That's just a buzzword, right? And the reason why I don't really give a shit about Loner Box in general is because, like, I maybe falsely or mistakenly assume that he was someone who calls what Israel is doing to be genocidal, and therefore has done coverage on the issue that is like relatively truthful. Now, having said that, the reason why I still don't care enough about tackling his perspective and making videos about him is because, like I said, it is about the collection of opinions that you have and the side that you present on certain things. Now, this is exactly, I'm going to turn this around for a second. If you see someone who appears to be progressive, appears to be on the left, but is constantly hitting left, constantly going after people like myself, claiming that I am, you know, too pro-Houthi, or maybe even an Islamist fundamentalist, or things of that nature. When someone is like focusing on that while there's an active ethnic cleansing campaign happening, okay, that immediately shows me that maybe you're not super serious about like covering these broader issues. Okay? That's it. That is the way I look at this stuff. The way I look at this stuff is like, if I see you hyper focusing not on the likes of Ben Shapiro, not on the likes of I don't know, those who are like actively and consciously defending Israel's genocidal ambition, if I see you cozying up to people doing that sort of thing, if I see you maybe even traveling to Israel with people who have openly stated that you know, Israel should do a genocide, and then worked off of that original sentiment to try to find like quick, piffy talking points that justify their positions, then it's like kind of, it's weird. It's still not enough for me to talk about it and cover it and make videos about it or whatever, but it does show me that like you're not really interested in the causes that you claim to care about. For example, let's say someone is pro-trans. This community is very pro-trans. We all know there are a shit ton of other pro-trans people, trans content creators, trans people themselves online on Twitter that sometimes chirp and maybe don't put their best foot forward. We know the reasons for why that happens, and that's fine. So if you were to make an assessment on whether someone is a pro-trans content creator or not, you could potentially look at the broader scope of their coverage. Are they constantly attacking anti-trans content creators, or are they claiming to be pro-trans while simultaneously shitting on trans people? Like almost always hyperfixating on other content creators who are pro-trans, but maybe not sufficiently pro-trans. Does that make sense? That's what I look at. I look at who someone's enemies are, who they are positioning themselves against, to get a better understanding of like what their genuine worldview looks like, what they actually care about. I show you every day who I am against. I show you every day what positions I am against. I show you every day with my coverage. I show you every day with who I am criticizing, who I'm choosing to criticize. There's a million different people. I could have a disagreement with a shit ton of people. There's a reason why you see the broadest scope of my haters run the gamut of the pipeline meme that you were showing. People who like will defend the arbitrary nature of age of consent laws and how they should be abolished or whatever, or how it's actually not pedophilia but ephebophilia, or, you know, Nazis of different varieties. That's it. A lot of content creators on YouTube just like to do the holy then the other / faming. What does that even mean? What did you just write? Anyway, like, I'll give you a great example. There has never been a single moment. There has never been a single moment where I have allowed any kind of anti-Semitic sentiment to exist in this community. There have been plenty of people throughout the past 9 months that have come in to be like, yeah, see, we were right about the Jews. We banned them, right? Immediately. There has never been a moment where I'm like, hold on, let me listen to what this guy has to say, when they're like a very clearly Nazi account that is now pumping out anti-Israel information or whatever. Like, I have actually spent time showing people who those grifters are and what their genuine opinions are. I don't just cozy up to fascists specifically because they ostensibly are on my side on the issue of Israel, because they're not, because I understand that they're not. I understand that they're simply utilizing Israel as a way to simply utilizing Israel as a way to just do anti-Semitism. The higher order here is anti-Semitism. That's simply just business when you're an online content creator. If Hasan was more open to more smaller content creators, then D-Man would not sit on this many orbiters. This is Hasan's own fault. 24-month subscriber. How come? Be honest here. Are Hasan good at gathering orbiters himself? Where do these small leftist content creators go to? You have no idea how to grow online. Remember, Hasan was once an orbiter. Not really someone we see much of. And Hasan has been going on for years on here. If all that's you can mention, that's still really bad. This guy mentions a bunch of content creators who are not orbiters, by the way. They're fully fledged content creators in their own right. That is insane. Your demand is that I like literally collect smaller content creators like Pokemon so I can create an entire community of dick rider content creators? That's psychopathic. I know but he keeps a closed group of orbiters to the point of heavy gatekeeping. No, man, you sound unhinged. I treat people like they're human beings and not like look at it from the perspective of having like a harem of yes men who are going to abide by all of my wishes and attack my enemies and defend me unconditionally. What the Also, there's a shit ton of content creators that I collaborate with that are either around my size or maybe a little bit smaller than me or even larger than me. But you don't even consider that to be a thing because you are looking at content creators not as human beings, but simply as literally a number. How many subscribers they have. That will show whether or not they are valuable as allies or not. Israeli, when I first came in here and said some things regarding my being Israeli, I saw some anti-Semitic comments directed towards me getting deleted from the chat. Stuff like, we're outside your house and shit like that. So thanks. Yeah, of course. That's crazy. Hasan is not carefully conducted. You aren't understanding what he's saying. Your entire behavior is weird, bud. Way to misunderstand what I'm saying. Yes, I am, but they're still doing this in many ways as a business. It's literally a job for most of them. I don't know why you're so understanding of people's people just losing sight of their own personal individual convictions and just simply are doing it for a bag and then simultaneously saying, why don't you create that for yourself? I feel like that's weird as I literally stopped naming them with ... and he thinks that all I can name, you can do so many collabs with people who don't necessarily take your size. Some of them have a small audience, some have a larger audience. What do you want them to do? Yeah, I don't have orbiters because I have friends, I have allies, I have people who share some of my opinions, maybe not all, and they're all wonderful people, and I routinely collaborate with them and I routinely hype them up. Ultimately, it's ridiculous to be like, yeah, you have to defend me. I have to just pick smaller content creators specifically so they will unconditionally defend me. It's a major criticism that I have of other content creators who do stuff like that. Just develop a weird sycophantic orbit of content creators who are just suckling on their teat and maybe even changing their worldview seemingly as a consequence of that. That's weird, dude. These are human beings with their own personal convictions, their own dreams, their own opinions, their own attitude. I think it's very weird to reduce them to what they can do for me. Am I a villain? I need to have my own legion?
Not if the raped women are Jews. Israel is the only country in the world which, when it's attacked, gets attacked more. You know, the interesting thing about anti-Semitism is, as my late friend Jonathan Sachs said, it's a shape-shifting virus. It moves across the centuries. When you could hate people for their religion, the Jews were hated for their religion. Then you couldn't hate people for that anymore, so people hated the Jews for their race. And then after the 20th century, people realized that.
There's nothing funnier than Douglas Murray, a profoundly Islamophobic person, saying you can no longer hate people for their religion anymore. The f do you mean? You have a career built on shitting on Muslims. What are you talking about? You still very much can shit on religion.
That wasn't such a great idea either. Now, the Jews are hated not for their religion or their race, but for having a state. People around the world hate them so much for it that Israelis are attacked when they have hostages taken, and this is to remember the 100 hostages still in captivity in Gaza, who, if they were given back by Hamas today, the war would be over. And they're also attacked when they rescue their hostages. You know, the interesting thing about anti-Semitism is the Jews can never win, because historically they've been hated for being rich and for being poor. They've been hated for integrating and for not integrating. They were hated for being stateless. Remember, rootless cosmopolitans, the far right used to say. And now they're hated for having a state. Today,
Bro, you are the far right. That's so funny. Brother, what do you mean the far right used to say? You are the far right.
only really acceptable form of anti-Semitism, aside from the sewers of the far right, the only real tolerated form of anti-Semitism is anti-Zionism. Zionism, as we just heard, is simply the right of the Jews to self-determination in their historic homeland. That's all. Anti-Semitism, as we've also just heard, is double standards against Jewish people or cruel and unfair treatment of people because they're Jews. This isn't very far away from home here. If this isn't anti-Semitism, can the audience here tell me why the following things have happened since October the 7th? Why in a Montreal suburb a synagogue should be firebombed, as happened in November? Why there should have been gunshots against the yeshiva? Why in Toronto...
Great question. It's because Israel packages all of its actions and masquerades as the defender of Judaism, and people are too stupid to parse through the propaganda and come to their own conclusion that Israel does not represent the Jews. You, Douglas Murray, are going to definitely, in this conversation, bring up on multiple occasions that Israel represents the interests of the Jews. Israel is the Jewish home state. You already mentioned it, literally. You mentioned it literally a couple minutes ago, a couple seconds ago, as a matter of fact. This does not mean that the synagogue attacks are valid or just. They are not. They are acts of anti-Semitism, anti-Semitic violence, as a matter of fact. This is why we say here in this community and on the left that Israel, by packaging Zionism as a fundamental plank of Judaism, when one predates the other by thousands of years, by the way, you are playing into more anti-Semitism spreading because people see what Israel is doing. There's already a shit ton of anti-Semitism out there. And then when people see what Israel's doing, and then they see American media and Canadian media and all other like people in positions of power go, no, you're actually wrong for thinking that what Israel's doing is fucked up. They don't have a way. They do not have a way of like parsing through that information. They're like, well, what? Israel keeps saying they're doing this for the Jews. Everyone else is saying that like me hating Israel means I'm hating Jews. Well, okay, I'm hating Jews then, is literally the argument that people, the way of thinking that many people engage in. The expectation that there is going to be someone like myself who parses through this every day of the week is unfortunately unheard of. Israel is exacerbating and creating anti-Semitism by tying the actions of a state and the actions of a fascist ideology like Zionism to Judaism. It is gross. It is very dangerous. It happens to be very beneficial to Zionism, though. So many Zionists continue doing it. Because if Jews feel safe, or if Jews feel unsafe in other parts of the world, in the Western world, then they are going to be more interested in moving to Israel or defending Israel, because that's the Jewish homeland. It's the only place where Jews can be safe, even though Israel is not exactly safe for Jewish people at all. The one he mentioned in Toronto was solved, actually. Crime briefs. Toronto synagogue member accused of arson. Wait, what? The suspect is a member of the synagogue. Avram Bobrowski, 67 of Toronto, was arrested Friday. Police announced late Sunday and charged with arson, disregard for human life. No, it wasn't a false flag. It's probably some nutter, dude. Not everything has to be a false flag. I don't like this argument either. It makes it seem like real instances of anti-Semitism are all totally made up. Like, it's not. Yeah, he's probably insane, dude. It's more likely that he was just out of his mind and he did that shit. Not that he was like specifically doing a self-hate crime so that they can tie it back to like Palestinians or whatever. They're not all made up, but using this as an example is wild. It doesn't matter. He also said that Hamas engaged in mass rapes, which so far there is no evidence for. And as a matter of fact, there's only evidence to disprove that narrative. Both the Times conducted an investigation, not the New York Times, the Times conducted an investigation. The UN's report also could not find any conclusive evidence that Hamas engaged in like mass-directed mass rapes. He's just saying a whole bunch of shit he doesn't believe when he says believe women. He doesn't believe women. He has cut so much propaganda against the Me Too movement, against women in general. But now, when it suits the purpose of defending Israel, he's like, well, believe women only works if they're not Jewish women in Israel. It's bullshit. Israel honors British journalist Douglas Murray for supporting post-October 7. Yeah. No, he's been getting glazed. There aren't that many warriors out there who will do this level of propaganda. So they'll gladly have him. They don't give a what he said before October 7.
A bookstore owned by a Jew should be attacked. Why a Molotov cocktail was thrown through a Jewish community centre in Montreal. Why a Toronto Jewish deli in North York was firebombed. Why in Toronto the Orthodox synagogue was vandalised. Why in Toronto 2 men opened fire the other week on a Jewish girls' school. If it isn't anti-Semitism, tell me why just a week ago pro-Hamas protesters tried to go through Jewish areas in this city shouting not just Allahu Akbar, but, and I quote, sorry for the language, filthy Zionist pigs, dirty Zionist rats. Have you heard that language before? The Jews have.
Wait, he said Allahu Akbar would have been an anti-Semitic thing that they're saying in Jewish neighborhoods. That kind of revealed his perspective a little bit, didn't it? Is this guy even Jewish? I don't think Douglas Murray is Jewish, no. He's a right-wing charlatan and a fascist. Yeah. If you're Arab and you say Allahu Akbar, God is great, you're being anti-Semitic. A lot of the stuff that he brought up as far as like anti-Semitic incidents, some of which are describable, like the bookstore that he just calls a Jewish bookstore. I remember what that situation was about. The owner of the bookstore is a major Zionist and was literally trying to fundraise for the IDF. Get the fuck out of here, bro. What are we doing here? Like, what's up? You can't get mad at a person being like, dude, this guy's pro-Ukraine unconditionally. Imagine a Russian bookstore with a Russian owner in Canada being like, oh, I'm pushing Z, fuck this Ukraine bullshit. I'm trying to fund the Russian forces. You would literally go and kill that guy. Suck my dick. Can you imagine? Like, you would literally probably personally execute that person. Remember who else called people Juden rats, aka Jewish rats? You have failed your Jewish students and Jew hatred. Yeah, I do remember Shai Davide saying that like the pro-Palestinian Jews were, bad Jews. I don't remember him saying that though. He calls them Juden rock capos. Wait, what? You brainwash children into the terrorist mindset? When asked about Jewish students in JVP and Columbia University Jews for Ceasefire, Davide stated that he will still fight for them, calling them capos and Judenrat, groups of Jewish people who were forced to implement Nazi policy against other Jews. Just like Israel accepted the capos, like Israel accepted the Judenrat, they will accept the JVP and Jews for a ceasefire, Davide said. And I'm sorry, but it is not a big achievement to be on that last train to Auschwitz. I mean, dude, you're just insane. You are calling your own students capos for being on the right side of history. Anyway, I don't...
Now look, if you are interested in this motion, just bear this in mind. It's not about Netanyahu, it's not about this war, it's about double standards. And one question hovers over it above all, the question of who would protect the Jews. Who would you trust to protect them? The Europeans? The Arab world? No. History shows only one people will protect the Jewish people. The Jewish people. That's what Zionism is. Thank you.
Well, this crowd seems very open-minded to the notion of maybe anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism. Bro got a standing ovation for saying that Israel has to exist, otherwise holocausts will happen literally all the time. Israel has to exist in the violent ways that it does by eroding the lives of the existing indigenous Palestinian population, destroying them, doing an ethnic cleansing, doing an apartheid. If it doesn't exist that way, then, Holocaust 2, baby. Which, by the way, Holocaust 1 this dipshit, Douglas Murray, has definitely minimized. So, what is this about Gideon Levy? Gideon Levy's father left Nazi Germany on the last ship to Palestine before World War II, and 2 meters away from Douglas Murray talks about how anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. I swear to God, we got to burn the UK to the ground. You know, yeah, Gideon Levy being there makes this situation way weirder too, because he's like literally Jewish, descendant of Holocaust survivors, and is a very prominent Israeli reporter. So it's just like he is like the foremost authority in that room.
Thank you for that opening statement, Douglas. It's now Mehdi Hasan's opportunity to present the con side of the argument.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, in 1917, over 100 years ago, Arthur Balfour, the British Foreign Secretary, a card-carrying anti-Semite, a man who had denounced the evils of Jewish immigration into the UK, a man who referred to Jews as an alien and hostile people, he issued his Balfour Declaration, which promised a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. It was the first time a major world power had come out in favor of Zionism, which at the time was a pretty new and pretty controversial movement, calling not just for a Jewish homeland, but for the building of a Jewish majority state in Palestine. And yet the only Jewish member of the British cabinet at that time, a man named Edwin Samuel Montagu, adamantly opposed both Zionism, which he called a mischievous political creed, and the Balfour Declaration, which he referred to as anti-Semitic and a rallying ground for anti-Semites in every country in the world. The only Jewish member of the British cabinet, that is what he said. And yet tonight here in Toronto, over 100 years later, we are being asked to vote for a motion that would damn Montagu as the anti-Semite while praising Balfour as the champion of Jews and Judaism. That's ridiculous. In fact, this entire motion tonight is ridiculous.
Not. That's precisely the reason why Gideon Levy is on the anti-Semite side of the conversation, and Douglas Murray, who is literally said anti-Semitic shit, is propped up as like a defender of Jews. Because Israel only cares, Zionism means, as a fascist ideology, as a fascist project, the only thing that matters is the continuation of Zionism. Doesn't matter where your background is, doesn't matter what your opinions are. As long as you are pro-Israel, you can be as anti-Semitic as you want, potentially. That's it. And for the record, Ben Shapiro has revealed this. It's not like a secret at all. Ben Shapiro's openly stated this. Okay? Immediately, the way they talk is so different. Murray just spoke bullshit. Mehdi Hasan actually talking about history and reality and context. Yeah.
Disingenuous, ahistorical. It says, be it resolved, anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. It doesn't say some anti-Zionists engage in anti-Semitism, which I don't disagree with. It doesn't say some anti-Semites hide behind the cloak of anti-Zionism, which again, I don't disagree with. Everything Douglas listed about what's happened in Toronto, disgusting, reprehensible. Those people are shameless bigots. But that's not what the motion says. The motion says anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. No ifs, no buts, no caveats, no exceptions. Anyone who takes an anti-Zionist position is automatically, inherently, unavoidably anti-Jewish, an anti-Semite, a racist. That is what you would be voting for if you make the mistake of voting for this motion tonight, which I'm sure you won't do because you are far too smart and nuanced an audience to do that. You are Canadians! And I have great respect for Canadians. I say that for no apparent reason whatsoever. I like Canadians. I like Israelis. My debate partner tonight, Gideon Levy, Israeli writer, is one of my journalistic heroes. It's a privilege to be on the stage with him. But this debate fundamentally at its core, and I kind of agree with Douglas here, it's not about Israelis. It's not about Israel. It's not about Gaza. And by the way, on the subject of Gaza, given Douglas gave us some math about the death toll on October the 7th, horrific death toll, which we all condemn, I would remind you also that the death toll inflicted on Gaza, the deaths and injuries in Gaza are the equivalent, if we're going to do the ratios, of 2 million Canadians. 2 million Canadians. But that's not what the debate is about. It's not even about Zionism itself. It's about the legitimacy of anti-Zionism, whether you can be anti-Zionist, opposed to Zionism, which remember is a political ideology, a nationalist movement, not a religion, not a race, not a protected class, whether you can be anti-Zionist without being smeared, tarred, demonized as an anti-Semite. And I want to be clear tonight. You could be the most pro-Israeli person in this room tonight, the most proud and ardent Zionist here, and still vote against this motion with a clear conscience, still vote with our side, the right side. Because this motion is not about whether you are pro-Israel or pro-Zionist. It's about whether the rest of us have the right, the freedom to take a different view on Israel, on Zionism, on Benjamin Netanyahu even, without being silenced, without being told we're racists. We're not. Anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism. I'll tell you 3 reasons why. 3 reasons why you should oppose this motion tonight. Number one, if you vote for this motion tonight, you are throwing logic, history, and the English language under the bus. Because anti-Semitism is hating Jews, the people, and Judaism, the religion. Anti-Zionism is opposing Israel, the state, and Zionism, the ethno-nationalist ideology that underpins that state. Zionism is not Judaism. Let me say that again for the people up top. Zionism is not Judaism. right? It's a very modern, secular, political ideology movement that was founded less than 150 years ago by an atheist named Theodor Herzl, who said, and I quote, "The anti-Semites will be our most dependable friends, the anti-Semitic countries our allies." His words, not mine. Number two, if you vote for this motion, you're throwing Palestinians as a people under the bus. You're telling an occupied people, a dispossessed people, to accept their own occupation, their own dispossession, meekly, in silence. Otherwise, they're racists. As my friend Yusuf Manaya, the Palestinian-American activist, says, to ask Palestinians not to be anti-Zionist is to ask Palestinians not to be. And number three, last but not least, if you vote for this motion, you're throwing a lot of Jews under the bus as well. Not just Jews like Edwin Samuel Montagu, but Jews today. If you vote for this motion tonight, you're saying my debate partner, Gideon Levy, whose grandparents were killed in the Holocaust, who served for Shimon Peres, who's written for Haaretz for over 40 years, just won Israel's top journalism prize 3 years ago, he's an anti-Semite. You're saying the Satmar, the world's biggest Hasidic Jewish sect, which says it is fighting God's war against Zionism, is anti-Semitic. You're saying Jewish college students on campus, maybe some of them your kids, members of If Not Now and Jewish Voices for Peace, they're anti-Semites. You're saying some of the most respected Jewish voices in the world, like Abraham Berg, the former Speaker of the Parliament, Miriam Margolis, the actress from Harry Bloody Potter, they're all anti-Semites. That is what you're saying. That is what you're signing off on if you vote for this motion tonight. So I have a simple solution for you all. Don't do it. Vote instead for common sense, for free speech, and the right to criticize a foreign country, the right to criticize a foreign country and a political ideology. I beg to oppose.
Thank you. Natasha Hausdorff, let's have your opening statement now.
Well, thank you and good evening. What a privilege it is to be here, stood on this stage on what I consider to be the most important topic of our age. I have to begin with a debating tip coming from a land with a culture of a rich history of debate.
I have no idea who this person is, by the way. I do know Douglas Murray, but I don't know who she is. Is this in Canada or in England? Why is everyone English? It's in Canada. Okay, so what is she? Rebel News? No way. No way she's a Rebel News person. That's crazy. Isn't Rebel News also like openly far right? No shot.
And that is that in debates, it is for the proposition to define the motion. And
where are the Canucks at? Someone in Canada, explain to me.
Douglas did that for you, loud and clear. Mehdi seems to think that he can redefine anti-Zionism without you noticing, but the proposition are not going to allow him to pull the wool over your eyes and conflate Zionism with politics. Who has the right to define Zionism? Well, apart from the proposition in this debate, because that's how the rules work. Would you ask a misogynist to define misogyny? You wouldn't ask a sex offender to define rape? You wouldn't ask the KKK to define anti-black racism. So why, when it comes to the Jews, would you let the anti-Zionists define?
Wait, isn't that argument the opposite? Why would you ask someone who is a Zionist, and it doesn't mean that they're like Jewish automatically? Like in every single one of those issues that she personally mentioned, she said, why would you ask those in power, the powerful party, engaging in the violent actions, what like right of resistance the victims have? Like the dynamic is the exact opposite of the way she presents it. Asking Zionists, not Jews, Zionists, whether they are Christian, whether they're Muslim, whether they are Jewish, doesn't matter. Asking Zionists, those who defend Israel, how they feel about anti-Israeli sentiment is insane. It's no different than asking a Klansman how they feel being called a racist. Yeah, I don't think the Klansman is going to appreciate it. Why the would we ask them that? Yeah, why don't you ask the architects of the South African apartheid to define apartheid? Exactly. That's so weird.
Anti-Zionism. No, ladies and gentlemen, no minority should have its identity dictated to it. And we have defined Zionism. It concerns the right of the Jewish people to self-determination in their ancient homeland. Zionism is not a political ideology. Zionism does not stipulate how the Jewish state should be governed, which is what a political ideology does. It simply says it should exist. It doesn't dictate borders or the makeup of population. It does not say that Israel should be socially...
Wait, what? It's like saying Nazism isn't a political ideology. What the Nazism? Will's outside? Oh, shit. Yeah, Nazism isn't a political ideology. After all, Nazi Germany did not have, like, definable boundaries. Nazi Germany had boundaries that consistently expanded, for example. Just like Israel had boundaries that consistently expanded.
kibbutz team or capitalist startup nation.
Good.
Israel has exemplified both of those and everything in between. This is not about political ideology. This debate is about racism and creating a double standard where you make an exception for the Jews. Now, you don't have to support Zionism. But if you are anti-Zionist, if you are against the Jews having a state, you are against the Jews. Mehdi Hasan is lying about what Zionism is, and in an attempt to win this debate and to provide cover for his own anti-Semitism, we usually hear a series of lies spewed by anti-Semites and anti-Zionists in an attempt to justify their anti-Zionism, and these are the modern blood libel. They are widely believed as the ancient blood libel, that Jews killed Christian children to use their blood for religious ritual, as widely believed and as false. I'm going to take you through 4 blood libels that anti-Zionists rely on. Number 1, the libel of colonialism. Israel is the ultimate decolonization success story. Against all odds, after Arab imperialism, Islamic conquest, and British colonialism, the indigenous to Judea re-established Israel. My family lived under Ottoman and then British colonialism in Jerusalem long before Yasser Arafat, who was born in Cairo, created Palestinian national identity in the 60s. Number 2.
Oh, she's hitting every marker. Arafat created the Palestinian identity. Yasser Arafat. This is literally, we have the same thing from Son of Hamas. Remember Son of Hamas? Oh God, this is so predictable. Yeah, the concept of Palestinian was invented by Yasser Arafat. It's so weird because like, it seems like everybody fully understood what that area was. It's called British Mandate Palestine. If you look at like Jews who immigrated into British Mandate Palestine circa 1948 and their documentation, it literally says Palestine and their place of birth. Yeah. Why is it that all the maps say Palestine? Why is it straight that like the early Zionist movement openly said that they were colonialists? Why did they reach out to Cecil Rhodes, and try to set up allegiances? It's just so strange to do as an indigenous movement, a land back movement. Oh.
The libel of ethnic cleansing. In 1948, when 5 Arab armies and the local Arab population attacked the fledgling state of Israel with the stated intention of annihilating its people, 700,000 Arabs escaped the fight.
The issue, by the way, I can already tell what the issue is. Mehdi Hasan is playing to the actual debate boundaries because he's too much of a debate lord. On the other side, the pro-Israel side, they're not doing that. They're just hitting all the propaganda talking points that are so much broader. Nothing that she mentioned has anything to do with like anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism being anti-Semitism. Douglas Murray did a decent job hitting all the pro-Israel talking points, all the Hasbara talking points of modern Hasbara, post-October 7 Hasbara. She is going through all of the talking points of like historic Hasbara that you hear when you're growing up and going to like Jewish camp or going to Birthright, that kind of shit. Like there are Jewish chatters who probably have heard a lot of the things that she just mentioned.
Those that remained became Israeli citizens. The Arab population of Israel has increased tenfold. This is ethnic cleansing? No. Ethnic cleansing is what happened to the Jews in 1948 when Jordan occupied the West Bank. Ethnic cleansing is what happened to 850,000 Jews expelled from Yemen.
Bro, there's something really crazy about being close to the Holocaust in history, only to turn around and be like, yeah, you know what? In 1948, the real ethnic cleansing happened when the Arabs did it to the Jews. Like that is entirely too close to the Holocaust for you to be like, the real ethnic cleansing? You thought I was going to say the Holocaust did it to you. Turns out, nope. That was wild.
Algeria,
anyway,
Egypt,
Will's
Morocco,
here.
Syria.
So I'm not going to continue doing this shit. We're going to go to Disney Pride Night.